Hey, I'm ZSH Plays. Welcome back to Lake Liberty, where today we're going to be building a perfect little replica of one of the most classic sites in any American theme park, a Dippin Dots. No American theme park is complete without a Dippin Dots, and we have some very hungry guests here, so today we're going to build them one. This episode is going to be all about one of the best new features in Planet Coaster 2, the scaling tool, and we're going to be using that to make a life-size working replica of a Dippin Dots. And the first thing we're going to do is place down one of these really useful new statues that are exactly the same size as the peeps in the game, so we can get the scale right on the Dippin Dots. We're going to be building the main body of the Dippin Dots using the art shapes. These are things I hardly ever use in Planet Zoo because they're always either too big or too small for what I'm trying to build, and that is why the scaling tool is so useful, because now we can get them to exactly the right size. So we're going to use this curved piece to build the sides of the little Dippin Dots counter. This is based on one I saw in a theme park. I think it's a slightly older model, which is good because that's the sort of vibe we're going for in this park. And then we're going to put this shape in and get this to the right size and use this to build a nice curved edge to the counter. Now with this counter, we want it to be the right size. We also need to take into account the fact that we're going to be putting one of the Gelato Bros ice cream counters in it so that it actually works. So we want to make sure it's the correct height so that we can put the counter in and have it work perfectly for the guests, and have the vendor that's working on it not be clipping into it or anything like that. We want to make this look as much as possible like Frontier actually got a license from Dippin Dots to put one into the game. That's the concept anyway. So we'll get another art shape here and start sizing this one up so that we can build the front of the Dippin Dots, and we'll use the scaling tool to get this to the right size. What we need is for the bottom of these pieces to be slightly off the ground, because we want to get some wheels under here as well, so it can be wheeled into place, and you just pop it on any path where you think guests might be persuaded to impulse buy some ice cream. So there we go, something like that. You can just see there's a little gap underneath there where we can get some wheels in. I've got the curved piece at the top slightly overlapping the bottom pieces because that creates a little sort of shelf for the guests to lean on when they're ordering their ice cream. And then we're going to get another art shape in and shrink this one way down so we can start building the sides of the counter. If you're wondering where we are in Lake Liberty, by the way, this is the beginnings of a new food court. In the next episode, we're going to be finishing the whole lake area with a food court and a little kids play area with a set of cute little water slides and stuff like that. We need some more stuff for the kids in this park. They've pretty much only got the carousel at the moment. Once this counter is finished, we're going to move it to pride of place next to the giant dipper right at the front of the park on the side of a path like it would be in a real theme park. It will also be up on the workshop by the time you watch this, and I'll put a link to the workshop code at the end of the video. Okay, I think this side piece is in the right position now, so we'll place that one down and then we'll just clone it on top of itself so that we can get the rest of the side in. So we'll just move that up there, and then we'll move on to the top of the counter. Positioning is really key here. What we want to do is make it look exactly like the real Dippin Dots, but make sure it's positioned in such a way that the vendor won't be clipping through it at any point, and it'll look nice and seamless when this is actually up and running. And with one side of the counter done, we can just clone this over to the other side. Get that in the right position and then start fiddling with it so we can get it to match up exactly. There's actually a mirror tool in Planet Coaster 2, which is something I've been begging for in Planet Zoo for ages, but it's only for when you are adding scenery to coasters. It is really useful, but wow, it would be even more useful if we could use it throughout the builds rather than just on the coasters. So there we go, that is the length that we want for this counter. So we copy that bit at the front over and then just start adjusting this side so it matches up perfectly with the other one. Get it nice and symmetrical. And then we can get the actual Gelato Bros counter in so we can turn this into a working Dippin Dots. In order to get a counter in, we need a path for it, so we can use the new path tools to make sure that path is exactly the right height for our counter to sit on. And there you go. You can see that the counter we've built is slightly too high. It's obscuring some of the Gelato Bros counter there. So again, we're just going to scale it down a little bit so it lines up with it perfectly, covers up the top of the counter whilst not obscuring the till or the ice cream counter or anything like that. And then we can just make a few adjustments now that we've scaled it to make sure it completely covers up the bits of the counter that we don't want to be visible. You can see there that you can scale whole groups at a time, which is really useful, as well as scaling the individual pieces. Enables you to quickly get something to roughly the right size, and then you can go in and tidy things up back here. The edge of the Gelato Bros counter is just sticking out there, so we'll move this oval cylinder over and then just reline up a few of the other pieces and get it back to that perfect shape that we had before, only slightly smaller. So we'll just finish that up on this side and then we'll move on to the inside of the counter. We'll start copying across the smallest square shape to get it to the end of here and get it nice and straight. And then we'll move it in so we cover up the actual counter there. So we haven't got any of that green showing through. And then we can delete some of the squares, so we've just got these sort of wings on the side of it, and we've got a space in the middle where the vendor can stand without clipping into anything. There we go, one last piece there, that's looking good. And then we can move on to getting some of the Dippin Dots logo and design in there. We'll start with the dots. I'm going to take this wall sign and get it to the right colour and the right size to start making those. And they've got this kind of shading effect on them where there's like a lighter colour to simulate a light source. So we need to find an even smaller circle to do that. Been through pretty much every circular piece in the game, and the smallest one I found was actually a stop sign for the guests. We'll try it with this one first. You can see it's just a little too big. If we pull it out here, it doesn't really look like a highlight, just kind of makes it look like two circles inside each other. So yeah, I went through every piece in the game, and the stop sign for the guest is the smallest circle I can find. So if we recolor this to slightly lighter than the color of the dots, and then shrink it as small as it will go, that'll make a nice little highlight that we can put in the corner of the dot, like so. And now we've got a couple of those in, we can just start recoloring them, resizing them, and copying them around and get it to match the real design. And then we can move on to the sign. So we're going to use one of my favorite pieces in the game now, the new null signs. So it's literally just text that floats in midair. Resizable, loads of different fonts to choose from, although I'd like more, to be honest. So we use two of these signs to make the Dippin Dots logo. It's a pretty simple logo, and we can get pretty close to it here. Just need to shrink this down a bit, get it on an angle, and then we'll get the word dots underneath on a slightly different angle in a slightly different size. And then we'll get one more of those shaded circles underneath it as well. And that's pretty much it. It's, like I say, it's pretty simple, but it's so much quicker doing it this way than the way that you'd have to do that in Planet Zoo. Hiding Australian signs behind the art shapes, and then adding thousands of spaces into the words to try and get them to the right size. A lot more fun doing it this way. All right, that's the words done. We just need to get a couple of really tiny little dots in underneath it now. So we use those stop signs again. Hardly ever use these pieces in Planet Zoo, but I think they're going to get a lot more use out of them in Planet Coaster 2. And we'll just get the words themselves so they're in the center. And that's the Dippin Dots logo done. What we can do now is just take that and then copy it onto the sides of the cart, both sides, so it's nice and visible whichever direction guests are coming from. And then we can move on and add some wheels. I couldn't find any pieces with wheels, even with scaling, that were small enough to use, so we're just going to use the old classic, the 3D full stop, and shrink this down and recolor it. And we can just put these under the cart. You're only going to see the bottom half of them poking out, and even that if you're lying on the floor, so we don't need much detail here. Just sells the idea that this is on wheels. It can be wheeled around the park. Once we've got a couple of those in, we'll just copy those to the back of the cart. And then we can move on to the last thing that we need to do, which is the canopy at the top. I tried this first with two of the normal canopy pieces, and it looks pretty good, but it doesn't look like the real Dippin Dots, so we're going to have to make our own. We'll do that in a second using some more font pieces. First, we're just going to put some more signage up here. So this is dead simple. It's just says ice cream at either side, Dippin Dots in the middle, and then there's some little dots between them that we'll just use a full stop to make. So we'll just get one of those in between the three words here. Make sure it's in the center. And I also want to put in a little fridge. I saw this on my reference photo, so just presumably some more Dippin Dots that can be moved into the main cart when they're needed. So we'll just colour that white, and we'll put a Dippin Dots logo on it later on. We'll get some wheels on this, just using the same pieces that we used before, and then we'll move on to making a custom canopy. To get the shape that we need for this, we're going to be using the J from the Noto font. It's got the curve on it that I want, that's going to form the front of the canopy, and then once we've got these cloned and made the correct width, then we can simply clone them back around the other side to get the other side of the canopy. So we'll move this piece into position till it matches up where this canopy starts, because this is the right height at the bottom. It's just too high in terms of its shape. And then we can copy this across here. And then once we get to the end, we'll just copy the whole thing and spin that round so it's facing the other way and forming the back of the canopy. I love doing little recreations like this. I think it's going to really help the vibe of the park to have sort of old school American theme park little Dippin Dots in here, especially with the giant dipper at the front of the park, and then the 90s water slide that we built on Saturday as well. It's going to make it more immersive, I think. Right, we are pretty much done. We're just going to delete that old canopy, and then finally we're going to add this piece in as the supports for the canopy itself. Once we scale this down, it is pretty much the perfect size for this. Just get it a little bit smaller and change the colors to just a more sort of standard metal color instead of a painted color. We have ourselves a Dippin Dots. Let's move it into pride of place at the front of the park. There it is. It looks so much more fitting on concrete than on the wood that we had it on before. It's such a classic American theme park site. Really happy with that. think it's time for our first customers. I didn't show this in the build, but I managed to cover up the Gelato Brothers logo on the cones as well, just using some art shapes so we don't spoil the vibe. And there you go, a working Dippin Dots in Planet Coaster 2. If you want to add this to your parks, then head to the Frontier Workshop. Code's on screen now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on Saturday for the next episode of Lake Liberty. Bye.